super excited to be here to speak to you about how we can scale up the new technologies to decarbonize heavy road transport. So I'm hoping today that I can convince you that the technology is there already today, but that we still have some challenges that we need to work on, and also to give you some inspiration on how we are taking on those challenges. Some of them will probably be recognized from our previous speaker from Shell. And I think that is a good illustration of that we are working between different parties in the industry, in the ecosystem, to overcome these challenges. So, from Scania perspective, we are clearly determined to drive this shift to a sustainable transport system. We have in our core strategy since many years to have the most efficient diesel technology. And we were also the first truck manufacturer to sign up for science-based targets. So we have promised that we will reduce the CO2 of our own operations by 50%. But our real challenge is to go after the scope 3, so the vehicles that we put on the road, and to reduce those by 20% CO2. And those numbers are for 2025, so that's just around the corner, and relating them back to 2015. So for us, that is a huge challenge. It's 97% of the total CO2 we emit, and we really need to work hard to make that happen. We have also signed up for the Climate Pledge, where we are planning or pledging to reach net zero emissions by 2040. So as you can hear, we have really serious commitments and really challenges to go after. And what we need to do then is to find good solutions. And I wanted to start by sharing how we find solutions for really challenging projects. So, on the left side of this slide, you see a truck which is for the mining industry. It has a total weight of 74 tons, including load and trailer. It's operating in the north of Sweden for the mining company Boliden. And this truck is transporting more than 2,000 tons of ore per day, and it's operating around the clock on a 30-kilometer route. So quite a tough assignment. The other example is from the forest industry. And what you see here is the world's first electric timber truck. And it has a capacity of 80 tons, and it's operating for SCA. And shipping of timber has always been said to be almost impossible to electrify. But this example shows that it's possible, and this truck is now in operation between SCA's timber terminal in Gimonäs and in the paper mill in Obbola. So these two products are pilots, but they are based on our series-produced electrical vehicles, but with some stronger components added. I think they prove that it is possible to take on even the most challenging assignments with electrified solutions. So let me take you through how we see the electrification roadmap of heavy trucking. Already today, we have electrical trucks running in urban operations, so mainly doing city distribution and also waste management. We have also launched our regional battery electric truck that will have a range up to 350 kilometers and will also be available both as a tractor and a rigid. But the real game changer for our industry will come around 2025, when it will be possible to do long haulage transportations with electrified trucks. And what you can see here is that we will then be able to operate for 4.5 hours with a 45 minutes charging in between. And that is of course correlated to the European regulations, where the driver anyhow has to brake for 45 minutes after a drive of 4.5 hours. So this will enable most of the transports across Europe to be done by an electrified truck. However, the challenge will of course be infrastructure, and we'll come back on that. The other reason why we see this scaling after 2025 is because the business case will improve. So today, when you compare the total cost of ownership of an electric truck with that of a diesel technology, you will find that it's much more expensive in most cases to have the electrified truck. But looking into a few years ahead, we believe that this will change, because of the development of the battery technology and the costs coming down for battery electric vehicles. But today, we are still depending on having subsidies from the governments and different types of regulations that are supporting. Because if we want this fast scaling to happen, we need to get that first experience already today and to start the preparations so that we are ready once the business case can be there. Now, before we go into the challenges, I want to also look into some other solutions that we have available here and now. As you can see, we at Scania, we really believe that electrification will be the main track going forward. But today, if we look at the possible delivery, and these are well-to-wheel calculations of the CO2 savings that you can do with today's situation. And today, with the average European grid capacity of green electricity, you can only achieve 55% when you go to the battery electric truck in the middle here. So it's really important to look at where we deploy these first trucks to get the savings that we want to achieve, of course. Looking into other solutions then, biogas, biomethane is a fantastic alternative. And it's both possible to do it with compressed and with liquefied. And it's possible to do that with circular solutions that are really also making it possible to go away from the current dependency on the overall pricing situation that is very challenging today, let's say. So these solutions are also excellent and delivering also fantastic savings. We also have biodiesel solutions and ethanol solutions, but all of these solutions are depending on the infrastructure, and very often we are finding that to be a big struggle. Luckily, we at Scania are not the only player in the ecosystem. We heard Shell before, but we also see that many of the big transport buyers are now moving into finding solutions for sustainable transports. So these global giants have in many cases, and we have seen an acceleration in the last few years, that they are now making clear commitments on how to reduce carbon emissions from their road transports. So this is an excellent development, and it will definitely help us to achieve what we want. But what are then the main challenges from our perspective? Well, first of all, we believe that the technical solutions will be there. You saw that most of them are available already today, but around the corner we will also be able to do the tough assignments. When it comes to the cost of ownership, yes, we believe that it will also be there in the future. We see it a solution in sight. But today we are still relying on subsidies and different kind of technical or solutions from the governments to make and enable this kind of solutions, and also the commitment from the different parties that are investing in these first pilots. What we don't really have solutions in place for today, what we don't have a clear plan for yet, is of course the infrastructure topic that will be fundamental to achieve this scaling. And the fourth challenge that we see is what we call the subcontractor dilemma. So let me start by looking into then the infrastructure topic. And for long haulage transports to operate, this will be very important. Today, with our city distribution and regional haulage, most of our customers are actually building the infrastructure at the depot or at the destination. So they are not relying on public infrastructure along the highways. But in order to scale long haulage transport, this will be fundamental. And we have estimated by 2030 that we need some 11,000 high-powered chargers around Europe. That's a big number, and it requires also a lot of grid capacity. We in the industry are taking our part of that responsibility, so we have formed a joint venture, even with our worst competitors, to make this happen and to be a part of the start of this journey. So we are planning with this joint venture to put 1,700 chargers in place, but as you can see, there is still gap to fill to have the remaining 9,000 then up by 2030. So let me then come to what we call the subcontractor dilemma. And I mentioned before that we have the commitment from the transport buyers and ultimately then the consumers to have a more CO2 efficient solution for transports. But very often they are pushing that problem on to the subcontractors. And who are these subcontractors? Well, that's the small and medium-sized transport companies around Europe who are doing this assignment to transport for these global giants. And I think many of you know this industry quite well. It's a very traditional industry, and it's also an industry that have been faced with very low margins for a long time. So I met a Danish medium-sized company some time ago who had just lost a contract with one of the transport buyers I showed earlier. And he lost it because he did not have a green solution. So he was super frustrated, and he had a lot of questions that he said, how am I supposed to answer? And I think they illustrate quite well the challenge that these subcontractors are facing. So I will share that with you. How should I know which technology to invest in? I don't have a research department of 100 people. And also, how should I understand the incentive structures around Europe? They vary from country to country and even from city to city. So I need another research department to understand that. How should I invest in infrastructure? And will there be enough to do long haulage? How should I be able to pay for the much higher upfront investment, even if I know that the cost might be lower during the period? And how do I need to change my operations to fit this new technology in order to have the time for charging or biomethane? That takes much longer than filling a normal diesel truck. And of course, ultimately, how should I know that it's worth investing when my contract is normally only 2 years? So I think we can all see that with these questions will not be answered only by a medium-sized Danish subcontractor or transport company. So technically, it is possible to find solutions for all of these transport assignments. But in order to overcome the challenges, we believe, just like Thomas was alluding to before, that we need to work in partnership to enable the shift to a sustainable transport system. Traditionally, we at Scania, we have only been in dialogue with the transport companies. Those are our normal customers. But in order to make this happen, we are also in discussion with many of the transport buyers, and they are actually coming to us because they also want to understand what is possible to achieve and how we can do it. And then, of course, infrastructure is a key part of this equation as well. And here we need to work together because it is coming down to a hen and an egg challenge. We need the infrastructure in order to put biogas vehicles on the road, but the infrastructure partners, they need to know that those vehicles are actually arriving, because otherwise they have made an investment in vain. So this is why we need to have the collaboration between all the different parties to sit around the same table and to find that solution and make the commitments from all the parties to make it happen at the same time. Finally, we also need policy to support us. Authorities need to step in and support with policy that enhances development. What we need is a correct pricing of CO2 that creates an incentive for this decarbonization journey. An efficient incentive framework for fuels, vehicles, infrastructure, fossil-free energy will do most of that job, but we also in many places will need initial investments in infrastructure. And these are parts that we cannot solve ourselves. So it's up to the authorities to set the framework that we can operate within. So I would like to now conclude with a few examples of where this kind of collaboration is already happening today that can hopefully be inspiring. First one is a long-term partner for us at Scania called Havi Logistics. And they have been working on the decarbonization of their fleet for many years using both gas and electrical options. And we have recently done an update for their roadmap of their fleet moving into more electrification. And Havi is one of the main suppliers of McDonald's on a global basis. And the collaboration and the expectations set by McDonald's are really fundamental to make this whole equation work. And what we have on the screen here is an example from Madrid, and I think that is an encouraging example because it proves that in this particular case, it's possible to already today see also the financial benefits of the movement towards sustainable solutions. Why is that possible? Well, because there are subsidies in Spain, but also because there are zero-emission zones in Madrid where you're only allowed to enter during nighttime if you have a sustainable solution. So by this, we can increase the uptime of the truck and get a more efficiency out of the truck, and thereby also then have a cost that is possible to calculate as a positive versus diesel. And the other advantage of this solution is that the drivers are more happy because they are not forced to be standing in a queue all day, so it actually has also positive implications for the driver. But again, McDonald's has been very important to be able to create this solution because they needed to open up their restaurants for having deliveries during nighttime. Otherwise, it would not have been possible. But great TCO savings, and even more importantly, of course, excellent CO2 savings as well for this particular example. The other example is from Electrolux, a very committed transport buyer who is really serious about taking down the CO2 impact of their transports all across the globe. And because they are operating across the globe, they are also looking into all kinds of technical solutions, both electrical, very much focused on electrical, but as an example in Brazil and Latin America, we need to work with biomethane, because there we will know that it would take a long time before we will have green electricity to be able to do it with battery electric vehicles. So this example, what you see here on the screen, is the first truck operating together with Gruber, which is one of their transport companies or subcontractors. And it's the first one operating in Italy. And also this case would not be possible without the collaboration between the different parties in the ecosystem, because in Italy there are quite low subsidies. So Electrolux have invested in infrastructure, and they have also invested in differentiated contract conditions to enable this solution to happen. And then you see the two CEOs from Electrolux and Scania on the picture, and clearly their last message to me when we had our follow-up meeting was, now we have seen the first pilot, now let's get on to the scaling of this technology. So this is what we are doing. We're working with a number of different subcontractors of Electrolux around Europe and also globally to enable the next steps on this journey. So, in conclusion, it is technically possible to decarbonize the heavy road transports already today, and very soon into the future it will be possible for all parts of the transport industry. But we do have some major challenges that we need to overcome. The TCO in the short run, there we are relying on governments and policy to support us. The infrastructure we all need to work on together. And then getting this very traditional industry to embrace this change and to find the way to collaborate to make it possible to move forward with solutions. I believe the examples of Electrolux and Harvey and McDonald's really prove that this is possible to achieve. And I hope that I, by this, have inspired all of you to join our collaborative approach and to think about how you can contribute, because we will need all of the different parties in the ecosystem to contribute if we want to make this journey happen. Thank you very much.